Good evening, Morgan Chapel. It's May 17th here on Sunday night, and just wanted to tell each one I've enjoyed getting back on Sunday morning with each one. And again, we're meeting once a week. We're having Sunday school and preaching there on Sunday morning just once a week for this month, and then we'll evaluate at the end of the month and see what hopefully we can get back to regular services. And enjoyed seeing each one that's got to come out. And if you hadn't, I understand, and you're in our prayers, and that's what we're going to talk about. And maybe there are people out there listening this evening and goes, really what it is to pray and how to pray. So, this here's a picture of our congregation a few years back, and this was a congregation picture photo taken there at Morgan Chapel. And I've heard a lot about stories about these people that were generations before us that worshiped on this mountain, and I heard about some of the great men of God that preached up here. I've heard about some of the Sunday school teachers up here, and I've heard about some of these people. This what a prayer warrior they were, and how is it to be a prayer warrior, and what is it to pray. And I can tell you, some of them may have been known by prayer warriors, but I can look around there, and some of them in this photo may have not been known as a great teacher or a great preacher or a great prayer warrior by man. But in the eyes of God, when we look down, they were a great prayer warriors. So we're going to look what a great prayer warrior is just for just a few slides here. So let's begin on, how we should pray. So in Matthew chapter 6, verse 5, it says, "And when thou prayest, thou should not be as the hypocrites are, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and in the corners of the streets, that they may be seen of men. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward. But thou, when thou prayest, enter to thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, pray to thy Father which is in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret shall warn thee openly. But when ye pray, ye use not vain repetitions, as the heathens do, for they think they shall be heard for their much speaking. Be ye not therefore like unto them, for your Father knoweth what things ye have need of before you ask him." So we see here, Jesus is teaching us again. Now, what's he doing? He's teaching us how to pray. And a lot of us know, I know how to pray, or some of us might be out there, I really don't know. How do we pray? Or, maybe you depend on someone else to pray for you. We can't do that. We have to pray. We have to have that communication with God. And he's showing us. He has shown us here how to do it. So let's look at some of the things here, what to do and what to do. And the first is, we do not need to be praying and trying to oppress other people, for they can look at me and go, "Woo, man, can you hear Greg Whitehead pray? You should hear him pray." And I shouldn't be worried about what others think about my prayer. I should be worried about how my prayer life is with God instead of worrying about others. And this is in verse 5. This is, again, how Jesus said the hypocrites prayed. And the Jews, they would pray 3 times a day, twice in the morning, in the evening prayers, and they recited different passages. Here I've got listed in Deuteronomy and chapter 6 and chapter 11, and they had one in chapter 15 also. And this is some of their prayers. But, some of them prayed devout from the heart. They prayed and they talked to God. And some of them, he said, were hypocrites and they prayed. Why? Why were they hypocrite for? Because they were worried about being seen of others. They wanted others to see them and others to brag on them about their prayer life and how they could pray. And back then, many of them wanted to be seen by others. Today in our life, today in the church house, many want to be seen by others. They want to be the center of attention. They want the center drawn to them instead of drawn unto Jesus. The attention needs to be drawn to God, not to us. So, that's what we've got to notice when we pray. We have to make sure that where my attention is. Am I worried about what others are thinking about my prayers? Or am I worried about talking to God? A humble prayer that is a seeking God and not caring what no one else hears. Because God doesn't care how loud you pray. Just because you pray loud doesn't mean God hears you. It just means whoever's in the sound of your voice hears you. The quietest prayer in the church may be the one that rocks the foundations of heaven, because it is a humble prayer. It is the one from the heart. So when we pray, we got to make sure, again, that we're praying not to impress people, but we're praying to express our feelings to God, and we're talking to God. That is what we're worried about when we're praying. So in verse 6 goes on, and it told us what? Jesus told them what? To pray in private places. We've been locked up here lately, haven't we? We've been in. So I hope that we are praying what? In our homes. In our homes, and where we're at, where you've been, not getting to come out to church, because, church should be one of the least places that we pray. We pray a lot in the church, but our main focus in our prayer, our main altar in our life should be around our home. That's where a lot of our prayers should be taking place, inside of our homes. Jesus isn't telling us, now, get this, I'm not saying that either, that we shouldn't pray in church. That way we shouldn't pray when we're around others. What he's telling us here in these verses that we read, he's teaching us that when we do pray, don't worry about impressing others that hear you. We need to be focusing upon God instead of focusing on those around us. And again, as I said, we know, don't worry if you pray out loud, if you pray silently in your heart. What means the most to God is that we're praying humbly, that we're praying expressly, letting God know our true feelings. He knows what they already are, so we can express them to them. So let's not be trying to impress others to think that we're some kind of great prayer warrior or want that title. And because I want that title from God, not from man. We're not going to know, God's going to come down and say that, but we know how our prayer life is. How is your prayer life? Does it need to be worked on? I think all of us, mine, each one, can be worked on. It can be made better. So let's begin to focus upon who we're talking to, not others around us. Because if we're focusing on them, that's who we're talking to. That's where our prayers are going. They're not leaving the top of the ceiling. They're not leaving as far as our voice can carry. That's far as they're going. So let's focus upon God. Verse 7 again, it talks about here what I call, to me, a meaningless prayer, a repetitionist prayer is not the focus. A lot of times people get on this repetitions, but it says this is how Jesus said the heathen prayed, with a babbling, with repetitions. And the focus is not on repetitions. I've heard people say, that trying to get on people for saying things more than to focus on verse 7. Look on the word vain repetitions, because Jesus is not forbidding repetition prayer. What is he saying? Because to what? He prayed 3 times the same prayer. Remember that? He prayed 3 times, repeating himself. Pray for many times for somebody that you love that's lost. Keep praying for them. Repetition. What are you saying? Vain repetition. We leave out that vain a lot of times. People get carried away. What Jesus was telling us about that vain repetition. That vain repetition is, again, can kind of mean a babbling talk, excited talk. It's what it is. It is a talk trying to draw the focus upon you. Trying to draw, again, the focus upon you in the way that you're praying. Saying, oh, have you heard Greg Wyatt pray? He uses such beautiful Old English. I can tell you, God doesn't care if you use Old English or if you can speak fluent Hebrew or if you speak just regular old hillbilly English. God is cared about what's in the inner of the hearts. What matters is our humble heart, that we truly believe that what we ask to. We have to go before him and knowing that God can answer my prayer. God can do this, and not praying and getting up and saying, well, he's going to die after we get done praying for him, for God to heal them. That prayer didn't hit the top of the ceiling. We've got to make sure that when we pray, they're not in vain. Do not pray in vain, that we're just going through emotion, that we're going through acts, that we're shaking, that we're doing all this, trying to impress other people. What we're trying to do is communicate with God. And if you're trying to impress other people, we better watch out. We need to get our prayer life back where it needs to be. So that is why I think God is telling us here that we need to be focusing on who we're talking to, not the others, ones around us. And the last one is verse 8. He tells us what? To approach the throne of God confidently in prayer, knowing that Jesus knows everything that you need. He knows everything that Greg Whitehead needs. He knows everything that we all need. It says in 1 John 5:14, and this is the confidence that we have in him, that if we ask anything according to his will, he heareth us. He heareth us. And I'm so glad that God hears us. He knows what I need before I even ask. And, again, we've got to remember back in verse 5, what if we're worrying about what others are thinking when we're praying, our prayers going to be meaningless. Or if we're praying and trying to impress them, if we're coming down and it's slapping them in the back and trying to make them feel better. I've been shut, slapped, and everything by other people while they're praying. We need to be focusing upon God. We need to be focused upon God. We're not trying to impress the person that we're down praying with. We're trying to what? We're trying to talk to God. Because if we're trying to press the person we're down and praying with, how beautiful we can pray or how much we can shake them while we're praying with them, we have our reward. What we're doing is trying to humbly go before God and knowing that God can help me, that God can help this person I'm praying for. We have to go to them knowing that God can take the situation, even if my prayer can't even be heard by human ears. It can be heard by God. But one thing, church, just remember what? Remember to pray. Remember to take time out for God and talk to Him. And don't worry about others. Worry about the one you're speaking to. God bless. I love you and hope to see you next Sunday. Bye bye.